Hi, I'm Tony Van Veen, CEO of Discmakers. If you follow the music business on socials, you may have seen charts claiming that Spotify pays rights holders less per stream than other platforms do. But is that so? Today I'm going to do the math to figure out if it is, and if so, why, and what you can do about it. So let's start with some facts. Spotify is by far the biggest streaming platform active in the US. Globally, they have a whopping 675 million MAUs, monthly active users, including 263 million paying premium subscribers. Apple Music, the number 2 in the US, has a much more modest 93 million paying subscribers. Let's take a look at the per stream payouts for each platform now. The highest per stream payouts come from Tidal at around 1.3 cents per stream. Apple Music is up there with a royalty rate close to a penny per stream. Deezer comes in at 0.6 of a penny, Amazon Music at 0.4 of a cent, and then Spotify at just a smidge above 0.3 of a penny per stream. And then in last place, by a mile, there's YouTube, which pays 7/100ths of a penny per stream. To put it slightly differently, if your song had 1,000 streams, Tidal would pay you $13, Apple would pay $9, Spotify would pay around $3.30, and YouTube would pay 69 cents. So, indeed, with the exception of YouTube, it sure looks like Spotify pays the least. The question is why? They're the biggest streaming platform out there. Well, to answer that, we have to look into the streaming revenue model. Every streaming platform pays out a fixed percentage of their revenues each month to the rights holders. Mostly the labels, but also the independent artists using distributors like CD Baby and DistroKid. For Spotify, that percentage is roughly around 70% of gross revenues that are paid out each month to rights holders. That is actually a big chunk of their revenue. In accounting speak, their cost of goods is 70%. Tidal also pays out approximately 70% of revenues to rights holders, while Apple Music pays out 52%. So, if Spotify and Tidal have the same cost of goods, why are their per stream royalty payouts so different? I mean, Tidal pays 4 times what Spotify pays per stream. And why are Apple payouts of just 52% of revenue generating a per stream royalty almost 3 times higher than Spotify, who actually pays out a higher percentage of its income to the rights holders? Turns out there's 2 main reasons for that. Number 1, how the streaming platform generates their revenues, and number 2, how many streams each subscriber listens to each month. Let me address each of those. With the exception of some 30-day free trial accounts, Tidal and Apple generate 100% of their revenue from paid subscribers. Spotify, on the other hand, has plenty of paying subscribers, but over half their subscriber base comes from free ad-supported subscribers. These ad-supported listeners generate much lower revenue than the $11 or so per month that you or I pay for our Spotify subscription. On top of that, Spotify also does a lot more bundling, like discounted family plans, than the other streaming platforms do. And finally, Spotify has a much bigger global footprint than the other platforms, with the exception of YouTube. And since a paying subscriber in, for example, India pays significantly less each month than a subscriber in the US or in Denmark, that leads to an ARPU, average revenue per user, that is significantly lower for Spotify than it is for Tidal and Apple. So, even though Spotify and Tidal pay out roughly the same 70% of revenues to rights holders, Tidal's higher ARPU is one of the reasons they pay more per stream. Now, to the second point I mentioned, another driver of per stream royalty is how active the subscribers are. And frankly, Spotify subscribers stream much more per subscriber than subscribers to the other platforms. Remember, and this is important, the streaming platforms do not actually set the per stream royalty rate. They set 2 things: the subscription fees they charge and the percentage of total revenues that they pay out to rights holders. However, this third factor, how much each subscriber streams, is also a big driver in determining the royalty paid out per stream. So, what are you as an artist to do? Only put your music on Tidal because they pay out 1.3 cents per stream? That would be a huge mistake. Because whereas Spotify has almost 700 million subscribers worldwide, Tidal has only about 2 million. So if you ask me, I would prefer to have my music on a platform that gets more streams rather than less streams. Because more active streamers means they're more likely to discover my music and maybe to listen to it on repeat. So this is all kind of weird if you think about it, right? The streaming platform with the largest subscriber base, which collects more in revenue than any other paid platform, which pays out as a percent of revenue more gross royalty dollars than any other paid platform, ends up paying among the lowest royalties per stream because their subscribers listen to more music than those on other platforms. Let me call it like I see it. For independent artists, the streaming model is broken. While streaming is great for the top 1% of artists, the streaming model is unfair to emerging artists who can't afford to pay any bills from the tiny royalty checks they get. And now, with so-called artist-centric pricing that the majors have lobbied for, it's even worse. You are now not even getting paid for any songs that are streamed less than 1,000 times a year. So what is an emerging artist to do? Well, you can hope that the streaming platforms keep raising their subscription rates. For starters, Spotify has started to do so in mature markets like the US and the EU. A higher ARPU will increase royalties per stream ever so slightly. But you don't have control over that. What you do have control over is how you interact with your fans, the loyalty you engender from them by giving great performances, the size of the email list you've built up, the way in which you release your albums. Maybe you put them out on CD first and don't put your next album on streaming right away. The place you direct your fans online. For example, send them to your website instead of to Spotify. Look, you can't count on Spotify or the majors to want you to be successful. They don't care about you. It is your job to build a fan base and figure out how to monetize those fans. Can Spotify play a role? Sure, as a discovery platform mostly. And then it's up to you to sell those fans concert tickets, CDs, t-shirts, and LPs to sustain your music. Nobody said this would be easy. Then again, the music industry never was.